Picture the moment everything changes. A mail-order bride steps off the train, silver hair catching the sun, and the gaze of a skeptical crowd. Out west, in a bustling frontier town, her would-be fiancé recoils at her prematurely gray locks. Publicly humiliated and left with no place to go, she steels herself to prove them all wrong. Unknown to her, a powerful rancher with a similar streak of silver has been watching, recognizing her as more than just the rejected bride. Could her greatest perceived flaw become her saving grace? In this riveting tale, watch how perseverance, raw courage, and an unexpected ally transform a woman society deemed past her prime into a respected force in the community, and perhaps even into the heart of a cattle baron. Don't miss the surprising twist that lead her from shame to triumph. And remember, subscribe to our channel so you won't miss the final reveal of this tender and inspiring Western Odyssey. Celeste Moreau's heart fluttered with cautious optimism as the train rattled toward the western town of Redwood in the spring of 1879. At 36 years old, her once dark hair had turned a striking silver drawing. Endless whispers in her hometown of Astoria. Society considered her youth spent, leaving her with few prospects and even fewer supporters. Yet she refused to accept the fate that idle gossip seemed to dictate. A series of letters exchanged with August Sewell, a successful store proprietor in Redwood, offered the glimmer of a fresh start. The arrangement wasn't exactly romantic. August called it a practical partnership, but Celeste dared to hope it would be better than the humiliations she had endured in Astoria. As the train approached Redwood Station, Celeste ran a hand over her traveling coat, remembering how many times she'd rechecked its neatness during the long journey. A small trunk of possessions sat beside her, containing her father's old medical reference books, which she never could bear to part with, her sewing kit, and her late mother's cameo brooch. A new life and a new identity beckoned. She stepped onto the platform in Redwood, scanning the crowd for the man who had described himself as of average height, broad-shouldered, and with a neatly trimmed beard. Among the onlookers stood someone who might be August, a man in his 40s, neatly dressed, but showing signs of restlessness. When his gaze flicked to her gray hair and lingered, Celeste caught a glimpse of disappointment before he masked it with a polite smile. Approaching him, she forced her nerves into submission. "Mr. Sewell," she asked, extending a gloved hand. He took the hand, giving it a perfunctory shake. "Yes, Miss Moreau, welcome to Redwood." She hadn't expected fireworks, but the coldness in his tone set off warning bells. Their letters had been warm, if somewhat formal. Where was that warmth now? A drizzling rain threatened overhead. So August wasted no time retrieving Celeste's trunk and hurrying her away from the station. Though Redwood was modest compared to Astoria, it was bustling with wagons, riders, and shop fronts. She found it charming with wooden sidewalks and a mountainous horizon. Yet she sensed everyone's stares, especially when they registered the silver hair beneath her stylish bonnet. Arriving at the small boarding house run by Mrs. Abbott, Celeste quickly realized that August intended for her to lodge there, contrary to what his letters had implied. He spoke vaguely of letting her get accustomed to Redwood before finalizing their wedding plans. "That might be for the best," she replied, determined to remain dignified, but inside confusion gnawed. Had he changed his mind simply because she appeared older than he had imagined? She recalled how plainly she had stated her condition in her letters. "My hair turned silver in my late 20s, though I remain otherwise healthy." He had assured her it was of little consequence, yet the flicker of judgment in his eyes on the station platform hadn't been disguised. When they parted, August merely tipped his hat. "I'll call tomorrow. Miss Moreau, we have matters to discuss." The words sounded more like a business transaction than a courtship. As Celeste hauled her trunk into the boarding house, she overheard whispers. "That must be Sewell's mail-order bride. Shame about the gray hair. She looks old enough to be his aunt." The sting of humiliation settled in her chest, but she reminded herself she was no stranger to gossip. Besides, Redwood had been meant to free her from scorn, not to bury her in it. Upstairs, in a cramped but tidy room, Celeste unpacked her trunk with shaking hands. She reread August's letters, searching for any hint of second thoughts. None. They described Redwood as a forward-thinking town, a place where good sense mattered more than appearance or age. Yet from the moment he laid eyes on her, August seemed to withdraw. She could scarcely believe how swiftly her fragile hope was unraveling. A gentle knock at her door interrupted Celeste's silent brood. Miss Abbott, a sturdy woman with a sharp gaze, stepped in, offering tea. "You look worn out," she noted in an even tone. "Traveling that far at our age is no small feat." Celeste gave a polite smile, unwilling to correct Mrs. Abbott's assumption that they were close in years. She was in her mid-30s, not nearing retirement, but the silver hair fooled everyone. "I appreciate the hospitality," Celeste said, setting the teacup aside. "I had hoped to be staying elsewhere, but Mr. Sewell changed his mind." Mrs. Abbott finished unblinking. Celeste's silence confirmed it. He's a store proprietor of some standing, always mindful of Redwood's opinion. She fixed Celeste with a pointed look. "You have my sympathy, Miss Moreau. He's not a bad man, but he's very conscious of appearances." Celeste swallowed the bitter truth. "Yes, I gathered that from our walk here." Shaking her head, the older woman patted Celeste's hand. "Plenty of women come west expecting a second chance. You're not alone in that. But Redwood can be as gossipy as any eastern city." With a curt nod, she exited. Leaving Celeste to her thoughts, exhaustion finally claimed her, and she slept fitfully, dreaming of her youth in Astoria, the initial streak of silver at her temple, the fiancé who had slowly backed away, the neighbors' whispers. By dawn, she rose determined not to crumble under August Sewell's sudden rejection. She dressed in a modest but well-crafted gown, her best traveling outfit tailored by her own skillful hand, and set out to find the Mercantile. The Mercantile Sewell & Co. stood prominently on Redwood's main street. Celeste mustered her resolve and stepped inside. Shelves bore everything from tools to coffee beans. The clerk, a freckled youth, eyed her curiously. "Miss Moreau, I presume Mr. Sewell is out back." "I presume Mr." She followed his direction, passing through a storage area to an office where August rummaged among invoices. He looked up, startled by her presence. "Miss Moreau, you shouldn't be here alone." She forced a calm tone. "I came for clarity. Are we still engaged, or has that arrangement ended without so much as a direct statement from you?" August sighed, shutting the ledger. "I'm in a difficult spot, Miss Moreau. The folks in Redwood, well, you must understand my position. They expect me to marry a younger, vibrant woman who can represent me properly." "You believe I cannot fill that role because of my hair," Celeste stated. "No use beating around the bush. That hair makes you appear older." "Some might question my judgment," he admitted, sounding almost apologetic. "I'm sorry if that offends you, but this is the reality I face." A flash of indignation heated Celeste's cheeks. "Then have the decency to release me from this humiliating limbo. End our so-called engagement." August hesitated, but then said, "Very well, Miss Moreau. We'll consider our arrangement null. I'll pay your return fare to Astoria." "No," Celeste cut in. "I don't need your money, and I'm not running back with my tail between my legs." She turned on her heel and swept from the office, ignoring the stares of the store's patrons. Her departure was a storm of grace and anger, leaving August Sewell alone in the dusty backroom, perhaps relieved yet unsettled. Emerging onto Main Street, Celeste felt Redwood's eyes on her as though the entire town had overheard. Indeed, hushed voices carried, "That's Sewell's bride, or ex-bride. Such a shame she looks older than my grandmother." Her heart pounded and her pride battled tears. She hardly noticed that a tall, silver-haired man, across the way, paused mid-conversation to watch her, an unreadable expression on his tanned face back at Mrs. Abbott's boarding house. Celeste closed the door of her small room and exhaled. The reality of her situation weighed heavily: minimal savings, no home to return to, and a shattered arrangement that had been her best prospect for stability. She had to find a path forward. She refused to be an object of pity or scorn. By the following morning, Redwood's rumor mill had churned thoroughly. Over breakfast, Mrs. Abbott offered glimmers of solace. "Word is that Sewell's already telling folks he generously offered to pay for your trip home, but you refused. Some admire your backbone, others find it foolish." Celeste's spoon paused in her porridge. "Foolish or not, I can't accept charity from that man. I'd rather find work here or move on under my own power." Before Mrs. Abbott could respond, a carriage pulled up outside and the landlady's eyebrows rose. "We have a visitor, someone from the Caldwell Ranch, if I'm not mistaken. They rarely come into town." Curious Celeste stepped onto the porch to see a stylish woman of about 25 descending from the carriage. Dressed in a fine riding habit, she introduced herself as Lucy Caldwell, niece of Donovan Caldwell, the region's wealthiest cattle baron. "Good morning," Lucy said with a friendly smile. "I've come to speak with Miss Moreau." Mrs. Abbott gestured politely. "This is Miss Moreau. May I ask the nature of your call?" Lucy turned her gaze to Celeste, eyes shining with eager curiosity. "I've heard you're a talented seamstress, Miss Moreau. My uncle recently saw some of your handiwork at Sewell & Co., the cloak you stitched during the journey apparently. He was impressed." Celeste straightened, startled that anyone beyond August Sewell or Mrs. Abbott had noticed. "Yes, I sewed a traveling cloak for myself, but it's hardly noteworthy. I disagree, Lucy insisted. Uncle Donovan often admires good craftsmanship. He told me to find out if you're taking on commissions. My cousin Harriet is marrying soon, and we need a gown for her. A small flame of hope ignited in Celeste's chest. Was this a legitimate business opportunity or a token gesture from Redwood's high society? I'd be grateful for the work, Celeste replied carefully, though I have no shop of my own. Lucy dismissed that concern with a wave. You can work from our ranch house if necessary, or we can find you a space in town. Harriet's fiancé has means, and there's no rush. But we'd like it done by the autumn. She paused, studying Celeste's silver hair with frank interest. Uncle Donovan also asked that I extend an invitation. He's hosting a small gathering at the Caldwell Ranch next week. He'd like you to attend as our guest. A hush fell over the porch. Celeste sensed Mrs. Abbott's astonishment behind her. The Caldwell Ranch was a legend in Redwood, a sprawling, successful enterprise presided over by Donovan Caldwell, who was said to be reserved powerful and rumored to share Celeste's silver hair. Are you sure he wants me there? Celeste asked, perplexed. I'm hardly part of Redwood's social circle. Lucy smiled, a mischievous twinkle in her eye. He insists I'm to deliver Harriet's deposit for the dress and make certain you know the invitation is genuine. Uncle Donovan doesn't do half measures. That evening, Celeste found herself sewing long past midnight, though this time for Lucy Caldwell's cousin. The deposit Harriet provided was more generous than any Celeste had seen. If she continued earning like this, she could remain in Redwood, possibly establishing a proper seamstress business and the invitation to Caldwell Ranch. She had no illusions about Redwood's elites. Some might resent her presence. Yet the personal invitation from Donovan Caldwell suggested a different perspective. As Celeste worked, she wondered if this famously reticent cattle baron had singled her out because of curiosity, pity, or something else. For a moment, she recalled the man she had glimpsed on Main Street. Tall hair, a striking shade of silver, gaze following her departure from Sewell's store with unmistakable interest. Could that have been Donovan Caldwell himself? If so, what had he seen in a gray-haired woman publicly rejected by her would-be groom? A day later, Celeste busied herself finalizing the pattern for Harriet Caldwell's gown, using every ounce of her design expertise. She had never sewn for someone of Harriet's presumed social station. This could be her breakthrough, provided Redwood's swirling gossips didn't sabotage her reputation first. Mid-morning, a carriage arrived again at Mrs. Abbott's boarding house, this time bearing a more familiar occupant, Miss Albright, the proprietor of Redwood's leading dressmaking establishment. Celeste's brows rose. Ms. Albright was known for her exacting standards and formidable personality. Miss Albright announced upon entering, I hear you're quite the needle expert. I have a proposition. Mrs. Abbott, eavesdropping from the hallway, quickly ushered Ms. Albright into the parlor. Celeste followed, uncertain but intrigued. With no small drama, Ms. Albright explained that her primary seamstress had fallen ill, leaving multiple commissions unfinished. Redwood's upcoming events, including Harriet Caldwell's rumored engagement party, demanded swift, skillful work, I've heard. Harriet's wedding dress is in your capable hands, Ms. Albright said with a forced smile. I can't very well snatch that from you, but I need help on other pressing orders, dinner gowns for the bank president's wife, riding habits for the mayor's daughters, that sort of thing. In the hush that followed, Celeste realized this was a genuine job offer and a lifeline. I'd be honored, Ms. Albright, she answered. But you must know I plan to remain independent once these orders are done. I'm not looking to be bound by a long-term contract. Ms. Albright's eyes narrowed with surprise. Clearly, she was used to employees desperate for security. Well, I can offer 2 weeks of intense work at $2 a day. That's generous in Redwood. After that, we'll see if a permanent arrangement suits us both. Mrs. Abbott's sharp intake of breath told Celeste this was indeed a good wage. She nodded. Agreed. I'll start tomorrow. After Ms. Albright departed, the landlady gave Celeste an approving nod. You've made quite a splash, dear. Sewing Harriet Caldwell's gown, now collaborating with Ms. Albright. It's almost as if Mr. Sewell did you a favor by breaking things off. Celeste tried to smile, though the memory of August Sewell's abrupt rejection still stung. She would not let bitterness overshadow her relief that she had found gainful employment. In some ways, perhaps he did. She agreed, resolute to focus on the bright side of her predicament. The next day, Celeste arrived at Miss Albright's shop precisely at dawn. The large front space displayed fashionable dresses from Eastern catalogs, while the workroom and back housed mannequins, bolts of fabric, and half-finished garments draped over chairs. A timid girl with curly red hair, introduced as Fiona, assisted Ms. Albright. Fiona seemed genuinely relieved to have Celeste on board. Ms. Albright can be demanding, she whispered, but she pays promptly. In the hours that followed, Celeste proved her skill on complex tasks that left even Ms. Albright grudgingly impressed. By midday, she had finished intricate beadwork on an emerald satin bodice. Flawless, Ms. Albright murmured, scanning each minuscule stitch. You're wasted on mere traveling cloaks. Miss Moreau, Redwood's elite ladies will clamor for your services. Celeste demurred, but inside confidence swelled. She might yet thrive here, strange stares and all. Already, Mrs. Albright had set aside her initial reservations, viewing Celeste's silver hair. Less as a defect and more as an exotic hallmark, the thought was bittersweet. If she had lacked these new connections like Harriet Caldwell's commission, she might still be scorned. After a productive day, Celeste left the shop with a small sense of satisfaction. Her step paused when she spotted a tall man in a black suit on the opposite side of the street, studying her from beneath a broad-brimmed hat. His hair gleamed silver in the late afternoon sun. Their eyes met, and though he offered only a slight tip of his hat, Celeste sensed a stirring inside her chest. She didn't need an introduction to guess he was Donovan Caldwell, the rancher who had singled her out to make Harriet's wedding gown. Yet no words were exchanged. Before she could cross the road, he was gone, melding into Redwood's foot traffic. A fleeting moment, but it spoke volumes. One silver-haired outsider acknowledging another with tacit understanding, Celeste continued to Mrs. Abbott's mind, swirling with questions. Why had Donovan Caldwell shown up so discreetly? Perhaps merely to confirm that Ms. Albright had indeed hired her, or to satisfy his curiosity about the woman, rumored to be Redwood's newest curiosity, a cast-off bride with unmatched sewing skill. Within a week, Celeste's needlework began to gain admiration from Ms. Albright's discerning clientele. The polite good morning, Miss Moreau, she once received in Redwood's dusty streets, evolved into effusive greetings. Ladies asked her about embroidery techniques, inquired if she might undertake private commissions. The change was dizzying, and Celeste knew exactly how precarious it was tethered to Donovan Caldwell's interest and Harriet's upcoming wedding gown. One afternoon, Mrs. Albright stepped away to handle a fussy customer, leaving Celeste alone with Fiona, who assisted by gathering pins and snipping threads. The younger girl's eyes sparkled with hero worship. You're the best seamstress Redwood's ever seen, Fiona breathed. I want to learn from you, Celeste offered a kind smile. You're very talented yourself, Fiona. Ms. Albright is lucky to have you. A knock at the shop door interrupted them, a more assertive sound than the usual gentle ring of the bell. Celeste glanced up to see Lucy Caldwell, once again, this time accompanied by a woman who had to be Harriet. Harriet Caldwell was in her 20s, her cheeks flushed with happiness. She wore a traveling cloak of fine wool and carried a look of excited anticipation, Miss Moreau. Harriet began stepping forward to clasp Celeste's hands. Lucy has praised your skill, and I can see you're the one to bring my wedding dress vision to life. Fiona's mouth formed an O at the presence of two Caldwell women. Ms. Albright, returning at that moment, nearly bobbed a curtsy. Ladies Caldwell, to what do we owe the pleasure? Harriet flashed a courteous smile. We're here to finalize the design for my gown. I insisted on meeting Miss Moreau in person. Harriet's eyes flicked over Celeste's silver hair. But rather than disapproval, there was a faint smile as though Harriet appreciated something intangible. They moved to a corner of the shop where Celeste listened carefully to Harriet's preferences. The bride-to-be had her heart set on a gown that blended modern Eastern fashion with subtle Western flourishes, perhaps embroidered motifs of mountain columbines or ranch life details. Celeste sketched ideas on a notepad, her hands steady, her mind bursting with new concepts. Harriet's excitement was infectious. Eventually, Lucy placed a retainer in Ms. Albright's ledger, clarifying that while Harriet's wedding gown would be overseen by Celeste, Mrs. Albright would supply any additional staff or materials. We want the best Redwood can offer, and we believe that's Miss Moreau's artistry, Lucy said pointedly. Ms. Albright nodded, though Celeste sensed a flicker of resentment at being overshadowed in her own establishment. Of course, we'll spare no expense for the Caldwell family business matters, concluded. Harriet paused. My uncle has also extended an invitation for you to dine at Caldwell Ranch next week. Miss Moreau to discuss design details in a more comfortable setting. He regrets missing you in town. A flutter stirred in Celeste's chest. So Donovan Caldwell was indeed behind these arrangements. She tried to keep her composure. Please convey my gratitude. I'll be delighted to visit. Once Lucy and Harriet departed, Mrs. Albright made a show of rearranging the shop's displays, studiously ignoring Celeste. The younger seamstress suspected Ms. Albright might fear losing her star employee to Caldwell Ranch. That fear was not unwarranted each day. Celeste felt Redwood's gravitational pull less, in Caldwell's beckoning world more. Be careful, Fiona whispered while Miss Albright was out of earshot. Everyone sees how Lucy dotes on you, how Harriet calls you by name. If Mrs. Albright thinks you'll leave her for Caldwell Ranch. Celeste offered a reassuring pat to Fiona's hand. I've no immediate plans to break from Ms. Albright. Let Redwood gossip as it likes. My focus is Harriet's gown. Yet inside she wrestled with flickers of longing for the possibility of a more permanent, independent setup. Donovan Caldwell's rumored invitation to dinner might be the next step in forging a bond that transcended Redwood's petty judgments. That evening, Celeste walked home with her reticule heavier from Harriet's deposit. Exhaustion tugged at her limbs, but there was an undercurrent of excitement. She had sidestepped August Sewell's scorn and found a foothold in Redwood. The only question, how far did Donovan Caldwell intend to take this alliance? And was Celeste truly prepared for the unexpected emotions stirring whenever she thought of him in his own silver hair? On a mild afternoon, a glossy Caldwell Ranch carriage arrived to collect Celeste for her first private visit. The driver, a courteous man in ranch livery, introduced himself as Rory, Mr. Caldwell said. To bring you straight to the main house, Miss Moreau, he explained, tipping his hat. Celeste, wearing her best day dress, tastefully trimmed with discreet lace, stepped into the carriage with a mixture of eagerness and nerves. As the carriage wound through rolling foothills and fields of grazing cattle, Celeste found herself awestruck by the sheer scope of Caldwell Ranch. The crisp air carried the scent of pine while mountains loomed majestically on the horizon. Eventually, they reached a sprawling two-story home built of logs and stone, grander than any ranch house Celeste had imagined. Donovan Caldwell himself stood on the porch, his presence commanding, despite a quietly unassuming posture. His silver hair caught the afternoon sun, and for a moment Celeste's heart fluttered at how naturally it matched her own. He descended to greet her, offering a cordial bow. Welcome to Caldwell Ranch, Miss Moreau. I trust the journey was pleasant. She returned his nod. It was lovely, Mr. Caldwell. Your land is breathtaking. Donovan, please, he corrected gently, gesturing for her to follow him inside. The foyer featured a high ceiling supported by rough-hewn beams, while the walls held paintings that depicted frontier life and family portraits. My parents established this ranch decades ago, but we've expanded significantly since. Harriet, Lucy, and a handful of staff gathered in a spacious parlor. Harriet hurried forward, introducing Celeste to a few ranch employees, including the housekeeper. A formidable but warm-hearted woman named Mrs. Perry. A lavish spread of refreshments awaited them: tea, fresh-baked bread, jams, and tarts. Harriet and Lucy chatted excitedly about the wedding, each mindful to include Celeste, who jotted notes about color schemes and possible fabric embellishments. After they'd settled preliminary details, Harriet and Lucy excused themselves to oversee the ranch's orchard deliveries, leaving Celeste alone in the parlor with Donovan. He leaned back in a leather armchair, regarding her with quiet intensity. You've adapted well to Redwood, he observed, despite the circumstances surrounding your arrival. She sipped her tea. I had no choice, Donovan. Gossips are relentless, but if I let them dictate my actions, I'd never find peace. A small smile curved his lips. Indeed, that's part of what intrigues me, your refusal to be diminished by assumptions. My hair turned silver at 29, due to an injury in the mines. People judged me an invalid, unfit to manage a ranch I built, Caldwell Ranch, into a cornerstone of Redwood. All the same. Celeste exhaled. Your success is known far and wide, but I hadn't realized the personal struggle. He looked out a large window at the expanse of grazing land. My wife Harriet's aunt passed 5 years ago. She was the last to see beyond appearances, to value the person rather than the shell. I never imagined meeting another woman who shared that perspective. Until I noticed you. Her cheeks warmed at the candid confession. I'm merely doing what I must to survive. Donovan turned back to her, gaze keen. Surviving is just the start. Thriving is the real aim. Miss Moreau, I'd like to help you thrive, not out of pity, but because Redwood needs your talent, and He paused as though reconsidering a more personal revelation. Well, let's say I see a bright future for you here if you choose it after tea. Donovan led Celeste on a brief tour of the ranch's main house, a grand sitting room where Harriet planned to hold her wedding reception, a study lined with law books and agricultural journals, and a gallery displaying antique rifles and heirlooms. The Caldwell family came west, poor seeking. Silver, Donovan explained. We found fortune instead in hard-working cattle. My father taught me that what sets you apart is often your strength, not your weakness. The sincerity behind each word left Celeste unexpectedly moved. August Sewell's insecurities seemed trivial by comparison. Perhaps Redwood's gossip about Donovan Caldwell was missing a crucial truth that he valued real substance in people, not show. Even as staff ushered them toward Harriet and Lucy for final wedding details, Celeste's pulse hammered with an unspoken realization. This man offered her not just a commission for Harriet's gown, but a chance to carve out a new destiny. When Celeste returned to Ms. Albright's shop the next day, she dived into Harriet's gown with renewed focus. She decided on a layered approach. The underskirt would be a subtle ivory satin, while an overlay of airy tulle would feature delicate floral embroidery reminiscent of the ranch's wild columbines. Each piece had to be fitted precisely. Harriet's shape was lean, her posture confident, a bride exuding quiet happiness. Between fittings, Celeste accepted other commissions, each bringing her new fabrics and fresh challenges. Ms. Albright wore a veneer of support, but occasionally made barbed comments about Celeste's quick ascendancy. Fiona, meanwhile, seemed determined to learn everything Celeste could teach. If you start your own dressmaking place, I'd follow you, she confided. Celeste patted the girl's shoulder and gently reminded her that Ms. Albright was still her employer. One afternoon, while carefully attaching lace to Harriet's bodice, Celeste heard the shop's front bell ring. Moments later, Fiona came scurrying. Miss Moreau, Donovan Caldwell is here to see you. Her eyes sparkled, fully aware of the sensation his arrival would cause. Indeed, the well-dressed rancher caused a hush to descend as he stepped into the workroom. Miss Albright hovered in the background, half curious, half resentful. Donovan approached Celeste's station. Forgive the intrusion, I was in town for supplies and thought I'd check Harriet's progress. He examined the nearly finished garment with open admiration, as if seeing more than just skillful sewing. It's exquisite, Celeste. Ms. Albright cleared her throat. Yes, Miss Moreau is quite talented. I'm sure Harriet's dress will be Redwood's talk. Donovan glanced at her, polite but clearly uninterested in Ms. Albright's attempts at conversation. Turning back to Celeste, he said softly, we have a gathering at the ranch next week. Some out-of-town relatives for Harriet's final gown fitting. I wonder if you'd like to stay overnight in the guest cottage. Finalize details without rushing back and forth. Celeste hesitated, aware of Ms. Albright's watchful gaze. That might be helpful, so long as Ms. Albright can spare me, she replied diplomatically. We're quite busy with other orders. The older woman pursed her lips, no doubt reluctant to release her prize seamstress. But Donovan's influence was formidable. In a voice that tried for gracious, Ms. Albright said, of course Harriet's gown is the top priority. You're free to do what's necessary, Miss Moreau Slaughter. As Donovan departed, Celeste escorted him to the door. Your father's name is on multiple supply crates in Sewell's store, she observed. Yet you buy from Sewell, Donovan shrugged. For now. But August Sewell's business ethics are questionable. I'm exploring alternatives. Redwood's economy depends on fair dealings, not monopolies. She recognized in him the same forthright determination she'd begun to cultivate within herself. That night, after hours of hand-stitching, delicate lace, Celeste found her mind wandering. She recalled Donovan's subtle courtesy, Harriet's warm welcome, Lucy's genuine friendship. They treated her silver hair as a natural variation, not a glaring defect. Redwood's earlier cruelty, symbolized by August Sewell, faded in importance. Across town, August Sewell was spreading rumors that Celeste was merely an opportunist who caught Donovan's eye through cunning. But such talk receded in the face of Donovan's unwavering regard and Harriet's enthusiastic praise. A few times, Celeste caught glimpses of the man named Sewell glowering at her from across the street or inside his mercantile. She pitied him in a way, living behind a veneer of commerce, perpetually enslaved by Redwood's fickle social judgments. Meanwhile, Harriet's wedding date loomed closer, fueling a swirl of excitement that overshadowed petty gossip. Invitations circulated widely, and Redwood readied itself for a grand celebration on Caldwell Ranch. The bride declared Celeste the reason her gown would be the finest Redwood had seen in decades, freed from Mrs. Albright's daily oversight. Celeste blossomed in confidence, finalizing embroidery designs that showcased her flair while honoring Harriet's wishes for subtle Western motifs. She'd become Harriet's confidant, too. Hearing about Harriet's fiancé's ranch, their shared dream of starting an orchard, and the children Harriet hoped to have someday. By the time Harriet scheduled the final fitting, Celeste felt a quiet sense of pride and lingering curiosity about how Donovan Caldwell might feature in her own future. More than once, she found her thoughts drifting to the possibility that Harriet's wedding might not be the only union Redwood would witness in the months to come. Harriet's last fitting was set for a crisp autumn morning at Caldwell Ranch. A brisk wind accompanied Celeste's journey in the Caldwell carriage. Fiona had packed the gown meticulously to avoid wrinkles. Celeste herself clutched a small satchel with extra lace ribbons and her best sewing tools just in case she joked. Arriving at the ranch, Harriet greeted her with a bright smile. "Lucy's inside making final table arrangements," she said, ushering Celeste upstairs to a spacious bedroom that served as the makeshift dressing room. Harriet's fiancé waited outside, politely giving them space. "He's as eager as I am," Harriet confided in a low voice, excitement making her cheeks glow. "Your gown is going to steal the show." Celeste carefully removed the layers of tissue to reveal the shimmering ivory satin and embroidered tulle. Harriet's eyes shone. "It's more beautiful than I imagined." She donned the gown, stepping onto a footstool so Celeste could adjust the final drape. The bride's reflection in the large mirror was breathtaking, in homage to both frontier practicality and the refined elegance of Eastern fashions. Celeste noted Harriet's posture, the way she gazed at herself with wonder. This was the kind of transformation Celeste lived for. When Harriet stepped downstairs to show her fiancé Lucy and some close friends, Celeste lingered behind to tidy her supplies. A gentle knock on the doorframe signaled Donovan's entrance. He crossed the room, observing the empty space Harriet had occupied moments ago. "Your artistry is astonishing, Celeste," he said, his silver hair catching the autumn sunlight that filtered through the windows. "Thank you for giving Harriet the gown she dreamed of." Celeste murmured her gratitude, acutely aware of how close he stood. Donovan Caldwell rarely displayed open affection in public, but in private, his focus on her felt almost tangible. "Harriet's a wonderful client," she replied, and attempting a light tone. "She knows precisely what she wants, which helps immeasurably." Donovan's gaze swept over the embroidered blossoms still pinned to a form. "I admire your skill, but more than that, I admire how you've carved a place in Redwood on your own terms." His voice lowered, sincerity evident. "I asked you here not just for Harriet's fitting, but because I had something else to show you." Curious Celeste followed him out a side entrance to a smaller, older cabin behind the main house. It wasn't neglected, so much as quietly overshadowed by more recent additions. Unlocking the door, Donovan ushered her inside. The interior boasted a large work table near a wide window, with excellent natural light shelves that could easily hold sewing supplies and a cozy sitting area. "This was the original ranch house built by my father before I expanded," he explained. "It has good bones." Harriet and Lucy suggested we convert it into a dedicated sewing workshop or living quarters for you. If you ever needed such. Celeste's breath caught. The cabin offered precisely what she'd longed for: independence. The space to operate a personal atelier free from Ms. Albright's overshadowing. "It's perfect," she said softly, running her hand over the table's worn but smooth surface. She recalled Harriet's earlier comment that Donovan had big plans for Celeste's future in Redwood. Was this the next step? Donovan's expression was warm, though tinted with vulnerability. "I realize this might be sudden. You have your arrangement with Miss Albright in the boarding house, but I want to see you flourish, truly flourish. And Redwood's acceptance can be fickle unless it's anchored by meaningful relationships. This cabin is my gesture, a place for your talents to shine unencumbered." Emotion swelled in her chest. She thought of August Sue and how he'd crumbled under Redwood's shallow judgments. Then she looked at Donovan, who was offering her autonomy and solidarity, not pity. "I don't know what to say." Celeste finally managed, tears pricking her eyes. "Say you'll consider it," he urged gently. "No obligations. You can keep Harriet's wedding commissions and any others. You could live here or just run your workshop from it. All I ask is that you not let Redwood's gossip stifle your gifts." Celeste nodded, heart pounding. Her future had never felt more open, more promising. She had come west, expecting a marriage that never happened, only to find an unlikely ally in a silver-haired rancher who believed in her value beyond any superficial measure. On Harriet's wedding day, Redwood gathered at the Caldwell Ranch in joyous camaraderie. Guests arrived in buggies and on horseback, dressed in their finest. The main house was adorned with floral garlands, while the smell of spiced food and fresh hay filled the air. A small orchard on the property provided apples for pies and cider, adding a festive note to the autumn celebration. Celeste worked behind the scenes, ensuring Harriet's gown looked impeccable. The bride radiated happiness, an elegant figure in shimmering satin and embroidered tulle. Lucy flitted around in a chic pastel ensemble, carrying final messages between Harriet and her waiting groom, who was stationed near the orchard's edge with the officiant Donovan Caldwell as host. oversaw the entire affair with calm authority, pausing occasionally to check in on Harriet and Celeste or to greet prominent townsfolk. August Sewell made a brief, tension-filled appearance. He offered forced congratulations to Harriet, then slinked away. Celeste glimpsed him exchanging a resentful glance with Donovan, but neither man engaged in open confrontation. Redwood's whispers about Sewell's dwindling prestige had grown louder in recent weeks, especially after Caldwell Ranch began sourcing goods directly from outside suppliers. He had no desire to linger where the Caldwell circle and Celeste were held in esteem. As Harriet and her groom exchanged vows under a rustic arch draped in lace, Celeste stood off to one side, teary-eyed. She hardly knew Harriet a month ago, but now felt profoundly connected by the creative journey of building her wedding dress. The bride caught Celeste's gaze and offered a radiant smile. As if thanking her once more, Celeste's heart swelled with pride and contentment. When the ceremony concluded, the party shifted to an outdoor reception. Tables groaned with food, roast beef, fresh vegetables, pies, and ciders. Musicians struck up a lively tune and couples took to a cleared dance area. Celeste found a seat at a quieter table, grateful for a moment's rest. She watched Harriet and Lucy dance in laughter with friends, while Donovan escorted a few ranch matriarchs in polite reels, exuding a graciousness that belied his stoic reputation. Eventually, Donovan excused himself from the dance floor and approached Celeste. "You've been working all day. Care to join me for a stroll, or are you too tired?" She smiled, setting aside her glass of cider. A stroll would be perfect. They walked beyond the hubbub, following a lantern-lit path toward a fenced pasture. The setting sun bathed the ranch in hues of orange and pink, and the distant mountains glowed with promise. Donovan paused at the fence, silhouetted against the sky. His silver hair matched the gentle glow of the horizon. "I wanted to thank you. This wedding was a triumph, and Harriet specifically told me to credit your artistry for making her day magical." Celeste's cheeks warmed. It was Harriet's dream. "I only helped realize it." He turned his eyes solemn, yet brimming with something she couldn't quite name. "I've considered Harriet's value editing a test of Redwood's acceptance, a sign that the Caldwell Ranch can unify people from different walks of life. In that spirit, I have a question for you." Her heart quickened. Another proposition. "Donovan, yes," he said, swallowing almost audibly. "We can speak of business or workshops another time, but right now I wonder if you would consider standing at my side not just as a seamstress under my roof, but as a partner in all things. Would you marry me, Celeste Moreau?" The moment felt surreal. The hush of the meadow contrasting with the distant music of Harriet's reception. Heat rushed to Celeste's face, a swirl of emotion uncoiling in her chest. She recalled how August Sewell had proven spineless, how Redwood's gossips once belittled her silver hair, and here was Donovan Caldwell, Silver crowned himself, offering her not just a place to live, but a place in his life. Words threatened to fail her, but she mustered them. "Yes," she whispered, voice shaking, then stronger. "Yes, Donovan, I will marry you." Relief and joy broke across his features. He gently pulled her closer, resting his forehead against hers. "Thank you," he murmured, "for seeing beyond my hair and letting me see beyond yours." Their breath mingled, carrying the soft smell of hay and autumn air. If Redwood's busybodies could have seen them now, they'd realize that no petty rumor or prejudice could eclipse such genuine shared resolve. Days after Harriet's wedding, the entire town buzzed with news of another engagement, Donovan Caldwell and Celeste Moreau. Some expressed delight, after all. Caldwell's ranch was Redwood's pride, and Celeste had quickly become a respected figure. Others whispered cynically that Celeste was merely upgrading from August Sewell's spurned offer to a far more lucrative match. But Donovan dismissed such talk publicly, acknowledging his intent to marry Celeste before Christmas. In Ms. Albright's shop, the atmosphere shifted drastically. Clients who once eyed Celeste with suspicion now asked her to design everything from holiday gowns to baby clothes. Ms. Albright is seeing an opportunity offered a permanent role. "Imagine the success if we combined your skill and my branding," she gushed. Yet Celeste kindly but firmly declined. Donovan's invitation to turn the old cabin into her personal atelier was too enticing, offering real independence not overshadowed by Ms. Albright's ambition. "Thank you for everything," Celeste told Ms. Albright, "but I need a space that reflects my own vision." Shortly after Celeste moved her sewing materials to the refurbished cabin near Caldwell Ranch, Donovan arranged for new shelves, better lighting, and a large table by the window that overlooked pastures Harriet visited frequently. Praising the cozy new setup, while Lucy teased Celeste about becoming Redwood's next style icon. Maybe you'll start a sewing school, Lucy predicted. Half in jest, Celeste merely laughed. The idea tickled her mind. Redwood's younger women like Fiona might indeed benefit from advanced dressmaking classes. As winter's chill approached, Redwood prepared for Celeste and Donovan's nuptials, with almost as much excitement as Harriet's wedding. Invitations were printed on fine stationery, courtesy of Harriet's fiancé's connections. The guest list included Redwood's most prominent families, as well as the loyal ranch hands, who had watched Donovan turn the Caldwell domain into a success. Absent from the list pointedly was August Sewell. On the eve of the wedding, Celeste found herself putting the final touches on her own gown, a soft silvery satin with lace accents that echoed the patterns from Harriet's dress, but in subdued detail. She'd included an embroidered motif of two intertwined columbines along the bodice, a nod to the flower that had first symbolized Donovan's personal acceptance of her. Lucy hovered offering pins while Harriet fussed over details. "Celeste, you must let us spoil you. Donovan insists on it," Harriet said with a grin. A part of Celeste still marveled at how drastically her fortunes had changed. Mere months ago, Redwood had ridiculed her for her gray hair, an aging spinster stepping from a train in humiliation. Now she was about to wed the region's most esteemed rancher. The difference lay not in her hair, still as silver as ever, but in the recognition that it was a symbol of resilience, not a brand of shame. The wedding day dawned crisp and clear. Early sunlight painted the Caldwell Ranch in soft gold. Celeste dressed in the cabin that Donovan had gifted her, assisted by Harriet and Lucy. The two young women beamed with nearly as much excitement as the bride. "We've all faced our share of Redwood snobbery," Harriet whispered, smoothing Celeste's veil. "Today we show them a new chapter." The ceremony took place on the same veranda where Harriet's reception had been, now decorated with winter greenery. Donovan waited at the front, posture, confident hair gleaming silver in the morning light. When Celeste stepped forward, an audible hush fell her gown's shimmering hue, blending seamlessly with her hair, her face radiant. In that instant, Redwood's gazes held no scorn, only admiration. The officiant spoke simple vows about partnership, unity, and acceptance. Donovan slipped a modest band of silver onto Celeste's finger, reciting, "With this ring, I honor every thread of your being, from your spirit to your silver crown." Celeste's voice caught with emotion as she responded, "I stand with you, Donovan Caldwell, in all we are. May our shared silver be a beacon of respect and equal strength." Applause roared. Even the few cynics present had to concede that something remarkable was happening. Donovan kissed his new wife gently and without showiness, but with a tenderness that drew sighs from many onlookers. Harriet dabbed tears from her eyes. Lucy clapped with delight, and Mrs. Abbott, standing near the back, appeared downright misty-eyed. The following celebration included a lavish brunch, live music, and a swirl of well-wishes. August Sewell was conspicuously absent, rumored to have gone into the next county on business. Celeste felt only gratitude that no shadow of that failed past lingered. She was forging a new future, one that Redwood had never anticipated but found itself embracing. Some days later, Celeste and Donovan strolled hand in hand across the ranch, the newly minted Mrs. Caldwell adjusting to the rhythms of ranch life. In the distance, ranch hands tended cattle while Harriet's orchard project began to bear fruit. The smaller cabin now served as Celeste's official atelier, where Fiona and a few others apprenticed. Pausing at the fence line, they gazed out at the open plains. "This is our world," Donovan said softly. "We shape it together day by day." Celeste leaned her head against his shoulder, silver hair mingling with his. No matter Redwood's earlier judgments, no matter the gossip that once branded her too old or rejected, she now lived in a place where her worth was cherished. And the two silver-haired figures standing at that fence, surveying a prosperous land and a bright horizon, were proof that even hearts once scorned could find a union shining with more than gold. It shone with the understated luster of silver, precious and enduring, reflecting on Celeste's journey. It's striking how the trait that once doomed her hair, turning silver too soon, ended up guiding her toward genuine acceptance and love. Her perseverance, fueled by quiet self-respect, slowly chipped away at prejudice, and the rancher who saw himself reflected in her shared burden. He recognized her true worth from the start. Their union stood as proof that what some call a flaw can be the very thing that sets us free. From my perspective, this story reminds us that life's biggest trials often form the foundation for our most remarkable blessings. It's about standing tall when dismissed and letting adversity refine your gifts rather than bury them. What do you think? I'd love your comments on how society's judgments can be overcome through courage and genuine respect. Join the discussion below, and if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe for more tales of resilience and hope that defy all the odds.